Welcome to the Rinkside Rundown podcast, your ultimate destination for all things women's hockey with your host, Chris Sinclair. Hello and welcome back to the Rinkside Rundown podcast. Today, I'm absolutely thrilled to be joined by Daniella Ponticelli, a current and incredible play-by-play voice for the PWHL, who is also, amongst so many other things, been a radio host, a sideline reporter, and former anchor for Global News Morning in Regina, amongst, like I said, so many other things. And we're going to get into those things today. Daniella, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me. This is awesome.
Like I said, couldn't be more thrilled to have you. I'm so incredibly excited to be able to have a chance to chat with you today and learn a little bit more about you, your career, where it started, and where it is now. So without further ado, let's hop in. Let's dive in. How does that sound?
That sounds great. I'm like, please, you might have to start me off with a question because I'm like, I could go off on a million different tracks here.
Perfect. And I can't wait for more of those as the conversation progresses. I'm sure that'll happen more than once, and I can't wait. But I feel like a great place to start is maybe a place that would be rather an obvious starting point, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about what inspired you to study communications and journalism in the first place. Like, what was the inspiration behind that?
Okay, so I will start with the basics. I was always that kid that loved to read and loved to write. Like, I could write stories. I did a lot of journaling. I loved that aspect. So I think in my mind, when I was dreaming about what I wanted to be one day, I always had this idea of I really want to be someone. I want to be able to write every single day and share that somehow, some way. So I think that was the small part of me that always had that kind of churning in the background. But there was kind of a pivotal point. I'm originally from Cape Town, South Africa, and my family and I moved to Winnipeg, Manitoba in 2000. I was just about to turn 10 years old, and we were met at the airport by a news crew because my mother, a little bit of background, she's a radiation therapist, and there was a big shortage, and there still is to some degree, right? Healthcare workers needing to come. And so she was one of many who were recruited from different countries to come and work at a brand new cancer facility in Winnipeg, Manitoba. And so there just happened to be a news crew there that day. They had asked in advance, are you okay with us filming your arrival? And, just asking you some questions about starting this new life with your family in Winnipeg, Manitoba, of all places. And it was a very cold May. I will never forget that. It was one of those Mays where it was still snowing, still very cold. And I was just so enamored by this whole process when I saw this because I had never actually seen behind the scenes of news making and broadcasting. And I think that I didn't realize how much that had an effect on me until later when I was figuring out where do I want to go? What do I want to do? And I was very fortunate to have great mentors in my life who asked me those questions. Well, what is it that you like to do? What is it that you've thought of doing? And so I think those pieces all connected at that point. Well, I like to write. I like to do this. Well, have you considered journalism? Have you considered a pathway to that? And in Winnipeg, the pathway is through one pathway, of course, is through a communications program that then adds journalism on as a layer in your third and fourth year. And I loved it. And it opened so many doors. And to this day, I'm just blown away by how many of the things that I learned there I still use every single day. But that was truly was this little bits of who I was as a kid, loving to read and write, inspired by some of those moments, and then coming together.
So the South Africa piece was something that's surprising. I wasn't expecting that, and I'd love to maybe dive in a little bit more in terms of what was your experience like back home, and then what was that transition like for you as you've now made Canada your new home?
It can be really tough. We're chatting right now, going into sort of a holiday weekend, and these parts are always tough because I still have a lot of family back home. And I think when I was a kid, I was just so excited to go somewhere new. We had never left the country. We had traveled within the country a bit, but this was so exciting. I'm going to be on a plane for the first time, take this long plane ride from tip of Africa all the way. I believe we went to Amsterdam was our first connection point, right? And it's just exciting. I always loved the thrill of that, and there was no fear. I was a kid, right? You're like, this is exciting, it's an adventure, and you don't really understand what that means, that literally every part of your life as you know it is different. Christmas won't look the same, Easter won't look the same. Just being able to go, like, we lived down the street from my cousins, and so we would see them every day. And part of my background is Italian. I think people can put that together with my last name, but actually, all four of my grandparents are from different countries. So we were always this really big, kind of eclectic family with so many relatives. And that was just all gone, right? So it was a big adjustment period, I think, in that sense, and kind of finding a community in Canada, which we were lucky enough to do. There's South Africans, of course, that live in this country, but even aside from that, making new friends in Canada and kind of discovering things. I did not know how to ice skate, of course. So it took me a long time to kind of learn the things that I felt everybody else knew around me, because we would always go to the community ice rink and I would just hang out. And eventually I did learn how to ice skate, right? But it's those little things that really help kind of make those connections. And it's tough. I mean, I love Canada. Canada is wholeheartedly my home. We became citizens not that long after we got here. I would say maybe 5 to 7 years or so. And I'm very happy to be here, and it's awesome. But yeah, there's so much of home that is still I'm still connected to, and family that are there, and parts of it that I really, really miss.
So, I guess that begs the question, what are some of the things that you've enjoyed most? I would say, at least specifically early on in your experience in moving to Canada, as well as what are some of those things that you miss about back home? One of them obviously is family, but also I'm sure there are other things you miss about back home as well.
I thought you were going to say the weather. For a
Yeah,
second.
as I asked, I was like, oh, also the weather
The
because it's not
weather.
cold. Yeah, yeah.
Well, it's strange. Like, I'm so drawn to water, right? I grew up on the coast. I grew up just around seafood, around coastal weather, around all of that. So it was a big shift to suddenly be in the prairies. And that's where I've truly been the last, oh gosh, 24, 25 years now. It's 24. Yeah, that's math. Um, and so it's just interesting how your body still, like, when I'm near water, when I go to the ocean, I was just near the ocean in Florida. It's just, you just feel it. It's just this part of you that you're like, I miss that. I miss that connection. And of course, being in South Africa is just such a beautiful country, but there's so much in Canada that I just love. And it was a really interesting time to be growing up in that country, because there was so much important change happening, right? The end of the apartheid, Nelson Mandela coming into power. And sure, I was a young kid, but I remember that. I remember the change in flag. I remember, a brand new national anthem to learn, and so much changed so quickly, and it was so exciting. I mean, it depends, of course, how you view that history, but for me and my family, it was very exciting change. And so, yeah, it was pretty incredible to be part of that. And then, because my mom was always interested in kind of growing her career and providing some more opportunities for her family, as the way that she saw it, that's why we ended up moving. But yeah, it was just one of those things, that things happen for a reason. And I'm so happy to be in Canada, and my family's still in Canada. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and I think that, talking about those opportunities, obviously you've had there's a long career of different opportunities you've had, and this is what we're going to get into in a moment. But one of the first things that you had an opportunity to do was you actually freelanced with the Canadian Forces.
Yes,
I
yeah.
thought it was an incredible story. So before we get into sort of more of those experiences, like how did that opportunity come to be, just to start out with?
So part of the program that I was in Winnipeg is called the Creative Communications Program. A little bit of time at the University of Winnipeg, split with time at Red River College. And in the college portion, you do so much practicum work, right? Practical experiences. You're on the ground, you're working. And it just so happened that there had already been a bit of a connection established, because one of the public affairs officers, who was involved with the reserves unit there, they had been a part of the program 10 years earlier. And so this was a really cool way to sort of bridge that gap of, we want to offer opportunities if there are students interested in covering military operations. And this was exercises more than operations. I should make that very clear, right? Going on exercises, but it was incredible. I got to work at CFB Shiloh, up in parts of northern Manitoba. We did go all the way to the Northwest Territories and spent, 10 days out. That was an incredible experience. 10 days out with a platoon, and I was with them the whole time. Like, we weren't indoors, right? We set up camp every day, night, whenever the exercise required it. Saw beautiful northern lights every night, but also had very little sleep. And it was just such an incredible experience. So I'm very grateful that that was an opportunity. And I was really drawn to it because it was a side of adventure, and it was also a world that I didn't know. And I think I've always been really drawn to that when it comes to my story. Like, I say storytelling, but being a journalist, I'm always so curious about, oh, that, what's that world like? I'm not, that's not something that I'm used to, and that's kind of always what's drawn me to that. So that's how that opportunity happened. I loved my work with them, and that certainly helped set me up for future work down the road, just in terms of my journalism career.
Yeah, I'd love to kind of dive in a little bit more in terms of like, what did that experience mean to you? What does it mean to be able to, you know, it's it can be sometimes so challenging to to tell a story, to find stories, and this is a rather unique kind of opportunity for you to be able to tell those kinds of stories. What did it mean, for you? Obviously, we're reflecting, so I don't know that
Yes,
you'd
yeah.
be able to say specifically, but what did it mean for you in that moment? But what does it mean for you as you're now reflecting on that experience and where you're at in your career now?
Oh, what a great question, truly. Because that was really, in a lot of ways, obviously the start. And I learned so much about who I am and how to operate in spaces that maybe weren't designed for me or weren't necessarily welcoming. Because that was part of the exercise too, was not only allowing journalism students to cover military exercises in a way that hadn't happened before. And these articles were either used by the Department of National Defense or even some of the local newspapers, depending where we were. We would freelance them around because it offered such a unique viewpoint. It also, in turn, allowed members of reserve units to get comfortable in speaking with media, right? And kind of, it was a dual exercise in that way. And it was a very male dominated space, and it certainly was uh, a brand new space for me. As I mentioned, I'd never been in that world before, and so you learn to respect rules, and you learn to understand, okay, I'm not you, I'm not in your shoes, so how can I both do my job respectfully and honestly and with integrity, and how can I also learn from you and kind of take this whole experience and put it into an article or share what happened here. And so I think, yeah, in hindsight, now that I'm reflecting back on it, was a really, really important part of this. And it also really got me excited about working in all kinds of conditions. Like, I love covering stories where we're out in nature, right? And doing things outdoors. I wouldn't say I'm necessarily the most outdoorsy person, but if I've got a full on snowsuit, I'm ready to go. I'll cover something in -35. It's all good.
And I think, we're going to get a little bit more into a lot of the, sort of barriers that you are absolutely a part of in terms of breaking. So so I so respect the fact that you were, drawn to those experiences, and they've obviously made a lasting impression on you. And I think it's those experiences and hearing about those experiences that can be really encouraging for anyone broadly looking at getting into a space like journalism or media, but
Mhm.
specifically when we're talking about women. And I think that's such a great story to be able to tell. And that's why I'm excited that we're going to get into it a little bit more in just a moment. because it's a story that needs to be told, right? So I absolutely respect the fact that you went through that process, that experience, you owned it, and look at you now. Look at you now. Like this, it's led to so many other opportunities. And before we get into it's a little bit more around sports journalism and the media aspect of your career arc. We should probably discuss like why sports? Like what was it about sports? You had so many, as you've mentioned, you started off with the Canadian Forces, which not sports related.
No, not at all.
Not at all. And now you're in this space, and you're really looked to as someone who is really well respected in the sports media landscape. What was it about sports that you kind of gravitated towards rather than something like news or something else, right?
Okay, I hope you're ready for a long answer, Chris. Are you
I
good?
am. I'm sitting down. I am absolutely ready.
Please feel free to interject. I always want to offer that too, like if you have anything, because my path to sports is likely the most roundabout way to get there. And part of it was I was very driven on my path to news. As I explained to you, I loved doing that work with the military, and that led to actually my first newspaper job, in which I still continue to cover some of CFB Shiloh, um, what was happening there, and that's in Brandon, Manitoba, for those who don't know where that base is, or near Brandon, Manitoba. And then I moved into broadcasting because my first big pursuit out of school was just to gobble up all the skills and experience I could possibly take out of everything. And so I was open to truly anything. And I had that was my first move to Saskatchewan. I took a job at Shaw TV Saskatoon. And for those who don't know, it's community access. It's great, awesome local television. And it's a fantastic training ground, especially at the time, because they were doing essentially local news wheels that were hyper focused on the community. So it was such a great way to meet people. And when you move to a new city, oh, it's so lovely. Every day I get to meet someone new and learn about what they do and be excited for what they do. It was also during that time that I sort of got my first taste of doing sports, but as a broadcaster. And what I mean by that is we do the mobile trucks, and that's actually how the PWHL broadcasts are done, right? You have a truck, a production truck parked outside, or sometimes right inside the venue where a crew is working, and then you have the talent, kind of in-house doing the thing, your camera operators. And so on a very small scale, I got a chance to do this. And I remember vividly, working a curling production and doing the graphics, putting the little hammer where the hammer needed to be, but everything, right? Just soaking up all of whatever skill and experience, because I'm a firm believer, you never know what you don't like or you don't know maybe what you do like, right? It is a matter of, I'm very much experiment when it comes to your passions and your career and what you want to do. If you are able to have those opportunities and it works out for you to try it out, go for it. You have nothing to lose. So that was kind of how I operated. And I always enjoyed my experiences on these productions, whether it was baseball, softball, curling, hockey, basketball, cheerleading. I did offer, I think my first ever sports commentary was cheerleading because I had done that in high school. So it was an easy segue. I was so familiar with competition days. And that's the big preface here, too. I just want to add, I was very much that kid who did like lots of activity in sports, but I was so much more into dance and acrobatics and like that sort of thing. And so it was a team. It definitely is a team sport, a team activity, but in such a different way, right, to what hockey is or basketball or football. But I respect those other sports big time. But that was more my stream. I just was really drawn to the arts and that kind of expression of everything. So that's that. It was kind of in a little box. I'm like, I like doing that, but I really want to do news. I'm still like definitely set on becoming a news reporter, working in a bigger city. So yes, I moved back to Winnipeg to pursue an opportunity there, which was fantastic. Got to work at CTV and really learn a lot of my skills. And by the way, I'm just going to segue very quickly. It was at CTV Winnipeg. It was that station that actually interviewed my family. It wasn't called CTV at the time. It was a different name. And so I was able to get the archival footage. So I actually have the footage of that very first interview that my mom did and my dad did. They're like little babies, right? And like then there's the 10-year-old me, right? So it was very pretty cool, full circle moment. Came back to Saskatchewan when other opportunities opened up in Saskatchewan, and I just always felt this, it was never complete for me in Saskatchewan. I always felt like I kind of need to go back. There's some other things I need to learn there. I don't know why. It was just one of those things. And sure enough, that was when I connected with roller derby, the sport of roller derby. And it's because they have a very robust community of roller derby, not only athletes that are fantastic skaters and phenomenal, but also really great officials who travel the world and officiate, top competitions, top tournaments. And I just saw a great entry point to connecting with new people. So I actually learned how to roller skate, learn how to hit, learn how to take hits, learn how to play roller derby. Loved it. It was so fun. It was just such an incredible community. But if you're asking me why sports, that was truly the gateway drug. Maybe I shouldn't be using that term, but it got me hooked. I was like, this is what I love about sports. I always felt a little bit like that's not really my world. Like I can participate as a fan and I love to watch it. Love to watch football, love to watch basketball, love to watch hockey. Would go to so many games, different levels, whether it's youth sports to, pro levels. But I never felt like I was really actively a part of it. And then roller derby opened that door and I realized, oh, I can be involved in a sport as an official, or I can be involved in a sport as even just a scorekeeper. I know that sounds so silly and so obvious, but to really realize like, oh, there's so many ways I can engage in sport that isn't just playing, that isn't just being the athlete. And so it was the very first year with my lovely roller derby team in Saskatoon. Love them. They held a big watch party for the international. It's the Women's Flat Track Roller Derby Association. Women's Flat Track Derby Association. Yes, WFTDA. That's it. They hold these big international competitions, and then the top ranked teams in the world, and there's like 450 plus teams worldwide, compete. A lot of them are from the United States, but there's some from the UK, some from Australia, a couple from Canada. And it was there that I first heard two women calling a game. And there was nothing out of the ordinary about it. No attention drawn to it. It wasn't, oh, this is a very special broadcast where we're doing this. No. It's just normal. We just do this. And not only that, there was so much visibility for the LGBTQ community within roller derby, and there was so much just inclusion and acceptance, and there's such great vibe and such great energy around it that I'm like, I love this. And then it also clicked that I could do that. I looked at these women calling the game and I'm going, okay, so I've never called a roller derby game, but I know this sport inside out. I've been studying the rules. I'm super engaged with it. And I'm also a broadcaster. So this could be a really exciting opportunity. And so from there, I just started doing local bouts. So whether it was public address, which by the way is a big educational component because you have to educate the audience on what they're watching. So it was so awesome. Like we would have so many parents and grandparents want to come and support their loved one, but not have a clue what was happening. So you have to explain to them, okay, the players are lining up on the track. So it's a very different type of style of calling a game, but I loved it. And I learned so much more about the game in calling it. And sure enough, within 2 years of watching that first international one, I'm going to spare you the long story, but I'd been able to make the connections, get the experience to get myself noticed enough that when I applied to do the international tournaments, I was given the opportunity to get behind the mic. And from there, that truly changed my life. I didn't know it at the time. I just thought this was a fun side gig that I was doing, and I wasn't really making any money. In fact, I was definitely losing money doing it, but I loved it so much. Being in your 20s at the time, you're just like, everything will work out in the end. It's fine.
Yeah,
Don't
that's
worry
a
about it.
future me problem. That's all
Yeah,
right.
that's later Daniela problem.
And we will be right back. This episode is sponsored by Durant Barristers. Durant Barristers is a proud supporter of women's sports and is an inaugural sponsor of the Rinkside Rundown podcast. Durant Barristers provides legal services for athletes, coaches, officials, administrators, and sports associations of all sizes, from minor associations to national sports organizations and professional sports environments. We routinely assist with safe sport complaints, investigations, anti-doping, harassment, discrimination, abuse, and governance matters. We also provide representation on general civil litigation matters, including employment and business disputes of all sizes. Durant Barristers founder Aaron Durant also provides mediation and arbitration services to assist in managing disputes in a timely and affordable manner. Durant Barristers has generously offered their best ever discount to fans and supporters of women's hockey. Mention the Rinkside Rundown podcast to, wait for it, receive 15% off all your accounts with Durant Barristers for the duration of your relationship with the firm. To learn more about Durant Barristers, visit www.durantbarristers.com. That's www.durantbarristers.com. Thank you to Durant Barristers for sponsoring this episode. And now, back to the show. That's an incredible story. And I think you also highlighted a couple of things that I think are really unique about your journey throughout the media. And that's that you weren't just on, like, it wasn't just, I'm going to be on camera, I'm going to be an announcer,
Not
I'm
at
going to
all.
be play-by-play, right? Like you've, amongst so many other things, you've been a videographer, a web writer, a camera operator. What do you think, or how do you think taking on those other aspects of whatever kind of production you're doing has helped to, get you to partly to where you are now, but also in understanding how you approach a broadcast?
Okay, those are actually, I think, two really incredible questions. I would hope, number one, that all of that experience, I would hope, translates into me being a much more respectful broadcaster to everyone on the crew. I don't take it lightly when there are incredible audio techs working with us, because I've also been in spaces where you don't have any support and it's just you, right? Trying to run the ship and hope that everything is going to plan. And it's so phenomenal when you have a team, and the team surrounding the current broadcasts are, I cannot stress enough, absolute professionals, absolutely top notch, just wonderful camera ops, audio techs, replay technicians. Everybody is on it. And I'm just always so grateful when I walk in. I'm like, this is amazing. I don't think it's ever lost on me. I kind of always have a moment, even when I step into Madame, I'm going to say even when, because that's the place that I'm calling the most games from. Typically in Toronto, I just get this moment of like, wow. It's like, it's still like, I don't think there's ever a moment where I don't feel that. It's just still incredible. So that would be one part of it. And I'm sorry, might have to ask you to re-ask me what you just said, because there was a second part that was really important.
Yeah, it's just like how, first of all, great answer. Secondly, it's how you think the knowing all of this that all of these various roles that you've participated in, how it's now impacted also your current, how you conduct yourself in a broadcast.
Absolutely. So, one of the things that, one of the many random sports journeys I've been on was working with the Saskatchewan Roughriders. And I kind of took a casual job. This was the summer before the pandemic, before everything changed for sports and whatnot, where I was kind of working some odd jobs just because of the way that things had worked out. And my partner at the time didn't have a job. He just lost his. And so I was just kind of gobbling up whatever opportunities I could get. And it just so happened I was working casually as a camera operator at a local news place in Regina, where there was a person there who was kind of connected to hey, the big screen at the Rider games? Well, I'm part of the crew and we're always looking for more people, and this is something I think you might be well suited for. Are you interested? And if you are, you still have to apply. Like nothing is given to you. You still have to like put yourself out there and make sure that you're the right fit. But that has been such a big part of understanding this business, is that it is about making those connections. That is so important, and that's really what helps propel you to get into certain places and spaces. I truly don't believe, and actually I can 100%, just looking back at how I even got to the point of getting a TSN debut last year, all of that stems back to my work sort of in just different positions and in different roles. All of it does. Even my start with women's hockey, that came from somebody mentioning that there was an opening and there was a possibility and to apply. And that was somebody I had worked for, or worked with rather, back at a radio station 5 years earlier. And didn't do a lick of on air work at the time. But he knew what I was interested in. He knew that I had this roller derby passion. He saw some of the other things that I was doing. And he also knew how I was as a worker, right? Just as somebody she shows up every day on time. She's happy to be there. She's willing to learn. And I think that's such a big component to it. And I can't necessarily advocate for every single person to try every single job. It's just not going to happen. And there are certain jobs that I haven't done, right? I've never been a replay operator. I respect the replay ops so much because of how fast they are, how quick they are. When you see, another shot, another angle of Emily Clark's goal, like they are so on it. I fully respect that. I've never done that, right? But I do advocate for learning, or at least even observing other roles, because it does make you a better broadcaster. You just understand so much more that if you're frustrated about something, for example, it's not necessarily a failure on a person. It could be so many little things that happened to the team as a whole, kind of behind the scenes, that allowed something to happen or didn't or not happen, right? I know I'm being very vague, but that's kind of the best way to put it, is that I truly do believe that it just makes you more honest. And to me, it really fuels my motivation to work as hard as I can. I'm not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I make mistakes every broadcast, but it does fuel me to do my best to give my all, because I'm one piece, one tiny piece of such a big, beautiful puzzle.
Well, yeah, and I think from that kind of perspective, I think it's when you're able to take on or do these other roles, like obviously you never know you're a web writer or a camera operator.
Mhm.
One day you don't know what kind of relationships or connections you're going to make just doing that job, or not to diminish or take away from the importance of that role.
Absolutely.
Then you move forward and you start building out those relationships, and then, as you said, who know like you 5 years down the line, you randomly get this message from someone or connection, you speak with someone that you knew 5 years ago, and that person's like, hey, I think you'd actually be really good for this role. So rather than looking at it and saying, i'm going to be a broadcaster and that's it, take on those other aspects as well, because through those other aspects you will continue to network, and it's the network that matters at the end of the day,
Yeah.
especially when you're looking at getting into more of an on air, or whether it's video, or whether it's radio. Those are those avenues. It sounds, based on your
Yeah.
story, that those are those things that really matter, is connecting and networking.
Yeah, it's the intangibles, right? It's a show of trust. Sometimes somebody might not know much of your story or understand maybe what your desires are in terms of, oh, she really wants to be in play by play one day. Yeah, once I started doing more roller derby play by play, I would set little goals for myself. And I had set a goal which wonderfully coincided with the pandemic, but that was, starting 2020. I don't want to do this anymore for free. I need to figure out a way to actually make this a viable part of what I do, because I love it so much, but I can't just keep giving. It's not working out for me. I got to be smart about this, right? And so the reason I say it coincided with the pandemic is that it basically shut that down completely. There was no play-by-play happening. Period. And so part of me had to accept, like, okay, so if I make this a rule for myself, am I okay with being passed over? Because sometimes people either don't have the budget or they don't want to deal with the budget or whatever it is. And I said, yeah, I accept that for myself, right? And so it is a matter as well of, once you've made connections and you start to get opportunities, that you also start to advocate for yourself. I often have these conversations with women, and I'm not because I can't have them with men. It's just that we have this conversation a lot, right? Is how do you advocate for yourself? And I'm such a big proponent for all of us constantly teaching each other how to be better negotiators as well, and how to set the tone when we, meet in those moments with people who want to hire us, or however that wants to go. And I'm veering off topic, but this is a big passion of mine, Chris. So yeah, I'm always happy to talk about that side too. I just think it's important to understand that you need to know your worth. You need to understand where your level of experience is 100%, but not to be fearful of asking, and being okay to accept that if somebody just wants everything for free and that's not something you can do anymore, that's the way it is.
I think that is profoundly great advice, especially for someone these days who may be a little bit discouraged. Obviously, the media landscape is continuing to, let's say, evolve.
Hmm.
I think that's incredibly profound advice for someone who may be interested in getting into media, but may also be feeling a little bit discouraged. Is to know who you are and to not sell yourself short. Provide yourself those opportunities, challenge yourself, and put yourself out there to continue networking, to continue connecting with people, because you never know, if you're passionate about something, you never know where that can lead you. And it could be nowhere, it could be everywhere that you absolutely imagined it could be, and anywhere in between that, right? But
I
but
think, to borrow, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but to borrow a bit of a sports analogy, sure, in football, right? Running backs, they're looking for the holes, right? They're looking for what's open all the time. They're not looking at, oh, there's a rope. Oh, there's somebody. Oh, no, there's this giant wall in front of me. What they're looking for is the light, so to speak, right? They're looking for the way to hit the ground and go. And I think once I started accepting that, I never played football, but I've seen that play out in so many ways. Like, how did that person do that when there was this big whatever obstacle is in front of you? And it's remembering that there are people doing that right now, right? There are people living out those things that maybe you want to live out. And so that means that there's definitely a way. It's not easy. So it is going to depend on how much you want it, what you want to do to get there, what you're willing to. It's not about sacrifice so much as just understanding what you value. And I think the only other piece of advice I give is really be honest with where your values are in terms of what you want. So if what you value and crave is a beautiful home life where most of your time is in one place, well, then having a job that puts you on a flight every 3 days is probably not for you, right? So it's okay. It's okay to want things that are different, or try to, figure out your passions that work within what you value. I think that's so important. Like, don't compromise on that. And it is possible, especially now in this world where there are remote opportunities and there are ways to kind of have it all, in the sense of, hey, I'm more of a homebody. I want to do that. I love to travel. And right now, it's working out beautifully. I love being able to spend time in Montreal and Ottawa, and I have a very supportive partner who's really helping that because we have pets at home, and there's always other things to think about. But yeah, I just think that's a big part of it too. Is just really be honest with yourself. What is it that you want? Big picture. And if you don't know, that's okay. That's totally okay.
I know there are a ton of listeners who will feel will that advice will resonate with, but I can confidently say as well that advice resonates very much with me as I'm looking at what's next. What's this next endeavor going to look like for me? Being able to connect with women's hockey players from around the world, play by play like yourself. This is one of those things where it's, you never know if you love something, if you're passionate about something, it's wild, but things will happen because when you're yourself and when you are genuine and when you show that passion, like people, that resonates with people, right? That connects with people. That means that you're going to create genuine relationships where people are going to be like, you know what? Hey, I heard this position was open. You should apply. But if you're but
Yeah.
if you're doing it because you want to advance your career, I think that's the disconnect. Do it because you
Mm,
love it, not because you're not, I mean, obviously we all want to make a living and we all need to get
yeah.
paid. But if you're going in with that mindset, I think that's where people can kind of see through that, and people can kind of see that you're doing this not because you want to do it, but because you're looking at what's next after that step, as opposed to
Absolutely.
like I'm
Oh,
just
yeah.
you're not always necessarily going to be like, you know what, I want to be a camera operator. But, and with all due respect to the people out
Yeah.
there who want to be a camera operator, but not everyone wants to do that. But by doing that, again, you're just being like, hey, I just want to experience all aspects of this. And if that means I'm a camera operator for a season, I'm a camera operator for a season. And I'll learn everything I can. I'll be myself. I'll be authentic. I'll be genuine. And I'll be passionate about it. And I'll do it to the best of my abilities. And if that takes me to the next step, then that takes me to the next step. And that's what matters, right? So I
That's so awesome. I'm so glad you keyed in on that. I mean, I'll share a very brief story. So Cody Fajardo, I hope people in Canada might know that name now. Grey Cup winning quarterback for the Montreal Alouettes, but he was in Saskatchewan right at the time that everything would have lined up. And in fact, 2019, which is the year that I was able to do the camera operating work, I was at every home game for that. He had his breakout year. He wasn't supposed to be the starter, right? But then Zach Caleros gets injured, and suddenly young Cody Fajardo gets his big break, right? That leads to everything. And I remember for a number of games, I was ISO cam on quarterbacks. So I spent half the game basically looking at Cody Fajardo's reactions as the game went on, and then the other half at the other quarterback. And so when I finally got a role where I was actually a host for a radio show that was all about the riders, first time ever that a woman was involved in the radio broadcast, which did surprise me. I mean, this is a radio broadcast that had been around for many, many, many decades, dating way back, and it's always shocking to me that there's still firsts happening in 2024. But here we are, and at that time it was 2022. But my first interview with Cody, I said, this is going to sound weird, but Cody, I first really got to know you in 2019, being a camera op way over there. I pointed to my perch and I'm like, it was pretty amazing to see you do your thing and to be doing a role that was completely different. And we kind of had a chat about that. But I just think that's exactly it. And it's also opening yourself up to knowing that I'm here. I want to be there, and where there is, whether that's in the broadcast booth or not, is a big thing. And I do set a lot of goals in that way, and I visualize a lot. I'm a big proponent for visualization. I think a lot of athletes are too. That okay, so I stepped into this broadcast booth, whether I'm just there because I'm setting up some cables for something, and I'm go, this is where I want to be, right? In a couple of years, like I want to be calling something from this booth. And then if it happens, when it happens, how it happens, it's pretty remarkable. And being able to call, I actually got to call U Sports football from Mosaic Stadium, and that was such a trip because I was in the broadcast booth that, when we were setting up for game days, that was so not my space. So it's pretty cool to think back on.
And now, a word from our sponsor. This episode is sponsored by sports nutritionist Melissa Buffunos of MB Performance Nutrition. As a former competitive hockey player turned nutritionist, Melissa's mission is to help the next generation of hockey players optimize their health and diets so they can perform their best on and off the ice. Ready to dominate on the ice? Melissa's new course, The Hockey Nutrition Blueprint, is opening soon. If you're serious about learning how nutrition can impact performance and building actionable nutrition strategies based on your unique needs as an elite hockey player, get on the waitlist today. Learn more and sign up at melissabuffunos.com/course. That's MELISSA BOUFOUNOS.com/course. Thank you to Melissa Bufunos for sponsoring this episode. And now, back to the show. We spoke about it briefly, or alluded to it briefly earlier, and you've mentioned it a couple of times, but, over your career, you've had the opportunity, obviously, to cover a variety of sports, and, well, that's an understatement, from youth sports football to women's world championships to lacrosse to the para ice hockey championships to basketball. And then, like I had said earlier, news, including weather, which is
Yeah. Love weather. I really do. I love weather.
especially when it's warm. But yeah, I think, you have been someone who continues to break down those barriers and have been a real proponent and a real supporter of others who are also doing the same. And I wanted to know what it means to you to be someone who has helped to break down so many barriers for women, especially as they're looking to get into journalism or media.
Give me a second here. I'm a very reflective person. So when you ask me these questions, it's like I get this rush of emotion because it is something I don't think about when I put my feet on the ground every morning, right? You're not waking up going, I'm doing this thing. You're just doing it. And so when we're sort of met with that reality, you're not the first person to ask me a question like this. It means so much because this is exactly what it takes. The way that I see, I don't know how to explain it, but let's just say being female forward, right? Whether that's in media, whether that's in sports, it is about supporting one another. I love that I'm able to, DM a fellow play-by-play announcer or message someone and be like, oh, that was just such a great broadcast. And we are so supportive. And I think that's a big, big part of it. Honest and supportive, right? That's a big piece. But it is just getting up every day and doing this thing and doing something that perhaps 5 years ago, 10 years ago, maybe even 2 years ago, felt like it was maybe never going to happen. And I don't just mean a league, I mean women in the booth, and not just in the booth for one day on a special event. I mean women in the booth on a consistent basis. I was at an event recently, I won't mention which one, where, and this happened so many times early on in my career, not quite in this way, but something similar, where I was doing a mic check, and right after I was done, the person who was doing the audio said, okay, and now can you get the play-by-play announcer on? Because you assume that the person I was working with, who happened to be a man, made the assumption that, oh, he's the play-by-play voice, right? And so I just think that every day we're able to show up and be ourselves and do our work. It's just another step towards, like, this is just the way it is, right? There's great male play-by-play voices, fantastic female play-by-play voices. We all exist, right? And we can work together and love what each other brings to the microphone and brings to a broadcast. I'm such a big fan of announcers. I'm always team announcer. So when I'm watching a game, I'm always like, oh, that was such a great tidbit, or that was really funny. Like I interact with the commentary because I genuinely love to listen to it. And I'm learning things all the time, and I appreciate what people bring the style to it. So I think overall, as women, just in any space, we just have to continue, asserting our authenticity, if you will, if you want to use fancy words, being ourselves, and also not being afraid to bring our perspective to something. And that's that. I say this with a lot of confidence now, but that, I think, is the biggest piece that I've learned over this decade plus career in broadcasting. I was very afraid for a long time of, okay, well, what if I say this and it's not the right thing? What if I do this and it's not the right thing? And then you realize that, well, hello, look around at everyone who's been here before you. They were allowed to do that. Why can't you do that? And you're going to make mistakes, and it's okay. You just have to keep going every day.
Yeah, and I think, you bring up so many great points, and I think one of the things that you'd mentioned earlier is essentially, it would be great. It would be great to, I'm going to say this with all due respect, but it would be great to not be talking about the inequality because it's just now,
Hmm.
it's just normal, right? Like it should be, like it shouldn't be a conversation, right? It should be women, men. It doesn't like who's really good at this, who's really passionate about this. It's a woman, great. It's a man, fine. That's totally fine. But I think what's what's unique about this moment is also just how much of an impact that visibility, seeing more women,
Yes.
whether it's in the, around the league, the majority of their entire like play-by-play crew are women, right? And you see rinkside reporters, women. You like all of these different things. You know, it's inspiring, and that's that. I'm saying that obviously as a man, I'm inspired by just how much it didn't matter that. I mean, it's not that it didn't matter, but it didn't get in the way for a lot of women. They stuck with it. Like you said, they were genuine, they were authentic. They were like, I want this and I'm going to make it happen. And it has. And I think that's why this moment more than ever is something, as much as it's a cliched, and I know it was a cliched question to ask, you had said that this is something you've been asked a number of times, but I think there's still value in, right now more than ever talking about this. Like how incredible is it to be able to watch a broadcast and you don't see any dudes. It's only women, right? And that's you see it in the crowd, not just for the players, but you see it for the players for sure, but you just see how passionate this next generation of women, whether they're little kids or they're, in their 20s or 30s, you're saying, hey, like maybe I don't have a career in hockey, like on the ice, but there's a viable route now for me finally
Absolutely.
in
Absolutely. And
broadcast, right?
yeah, and I don't mean to hijack this, but I will just preface to Chris that I was more than I don't mind being asked that question. I just always have a little bit of a hard time because I go, oh yeah, I guess that is a question I can field. I've been the one to ask that question of a lot of people. I've asked so many incredible women, like, how do you feel about being incredible? And then, so I realize I'm like, I've asked a lot of women that, and I always love knowing what their answer is. So I guess, if I get to if I have the honor of being asked something similar about, hey, how do you feel about being in this space? I'll always give an answer. I'm always happy to answer that. Um, but you're so right. I mean, look at the business side of this league and all the great role models there, right? The GMs, oh gosh, all the fantastic PR people, and there's men and women in these roles, right? I'm not trying to say it's all women or it's all this. It's just fantastic people who are all pulling in the same direction, right? Rowing in the same boat and doing this together. And that is what's so motivating, is that everybody is in this with the same vision. And I always have to give credit to the men who allowed, no, maybe alloud's not the right word. Men who opened up themselves to helping me, and not just me, maybe other women. And it's because I do think that there was a lot of that as well. Gatekeeping is a real thing in any industry. And so to have some opportunities open up and have the men who have been in those positions open themselves up and be so open and receptive. I know that we shouldn't be out here, applauding every little thing, but I wouldn't be where I am without them. So it's both the men and the women and everybody kind of embracing everything that's happening. And that's so important. And yeah, I don't know what else to say about that. I'm very grateful for so many of the men in this industry who have helped me out. Absolutely.
Yeah, I've said this once, and I'll say it 1,000 more times, and I'll scream it from the mountaintops if I have to. But being where I am when it comes to women's hockey, being able to connect with individuals like yourself, being able to connect with a lot of the athletes I've spoken with, has been the single most fulfilling and rewarding experience of my life. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. This has been I never thought in a million years would I be, sitting here with you, chatting with you, or, being able to sit opposite of an athlete, or, to be able to be at the rink and just be able to chat with the players. Like, these players are people that I've met, that I wish that I had met.
Yeah.
Watching, they were playing in the Olympics and representing various countries, and now, like, it's like I'm standing right next to that person,
Yep.
and
It's so cool. It's
yeah,
so
just being able
cool.
to connect with them and just talk, like, just be able to just have a conversation has been an incredibly rewarding experience. And I think this is a great segue into, my sort of, I got into all of this based off of the PWHL. Obviously,
Nice.
you are, and I said it off the top, the most incredible play-by-play. So I always enjoy your broadcasts, and so I want to know, as we kind of venture now more specifically into the PWHL. One of the things that stands out to me and has stood out to a lot of fans has been how innovative this league has been. And I wanted to know, what are some of those, innovative ideas that the league has come out with that have really stood out to you, especially as someone who's covered, not just, you have a ton of experience when it comes to league rules, various leagues that you're a part of or that you've covered. What are some of those innovative ideas that maybe have stood out to you when it comes to the PWHL?
Oh, I hope I'm not too on the nose with this, but I absolutely love the jailbreak. Absolutely, absolutely love the jailbreak. I know that there's so much excitement, a little peek behind the scenes. Uh, Personally, from where we were sitting, we were waiting for final confirmation on that quite close to, the start of that first game, because we knew it was okay. This is being discussed. The league is very much set on moving forward with it, but we needed that final stamp of yes, we're going with that. And it was just so exciting, right? So thrilling to know we get to introduce this to people. This is really exciting. It just adds such a great element to the game, and what a wonderful way. One thing that always resonated with me with what Jana Hefford has said a number of times is we want to be innovative with the sport without changing the game, because that's not what it's about. It's not about creating a new hockey. And I love that, right? You want to respect the beautiful game and the traditions of this game, but also you don't have to do everything the same. And this is just a really great way to go, well, hey, on a power play, when you score, it's over. Well, how about how about the opposite, right? It's just such a great element, and so many coaches have talked about what a difference that makes, especially when a game is near the end and suddenly you've got a desperate team, maybe down one goal. How many times have we seen that, right? And then there's nothing to lose. I'm going to go out there and score this jailbreak, and all of a sudden it's just a whole different ball game on the penalty kill, and how you would even treat your own power play at that time. So that's a big one for me. Obviously, the physicality and really allowing women to play the way that they've wanted to play, ideally with consistency. And nothing's going to be perfect, but that's what I've heard from every player is we just want to be able to play, but we also want to know that how we play in the first period, we're not going to have to suddenly adjust in the second and the third because things are suddenly being called differently. And that was the reality for so long at different tournaments in different places. And that's not to blame any one person. It was the whole fact that there just wasn't enough, to me, my opinion, wasn't enough women's hockey being played at sort of one level where, okay, let's really breed this consistency. So I think that was super innovative in that you're bringing in AHL officials and really trying to hone in the consistency piece and allowing that physicality. Innovative in a way that maybe is a little bit more subtle, but very innovative. Like that was a very important part of the game that we needed. I think on the broadcast perspective, and it depends on how many people notice this, but language that we use too. And we're always having discussions about that. I'm very much a fan of saying that a team is on the player advantage. Maybe some hockey purists might not like that, but it's not a man advantage, or, so it's like little subtle things, but we're all learning and we're constantly evolving and we're constantly having discussions about this. Really want to stress that too. We're never just, this is the way it is and that's that. we can't learn, we can't change. It's very much a learning process. And everyone's going to have a slightly different style with it as well. That's more of my piece. And I've always trended a little bit more into neutrality with my language, because I think because of my roller derby background, and we had so many skaters who were trans, non-binary. I've covered so many different teams where we've had players where part of our prep is pronouns. Absolutely. It was just like a natural part of it. It wasn't even a question. Everyone shared their pronoun, and we as announcers respected it. It wasn't even like we had to be weird about it. So, it's just a very interesting space that we're in right now. I don't know where it's going to go with the hockey stuff, but that's just my own personal take on some of the innovations and some of the great things about this league that I love, which is I can use inclusive language, or those are welcome things that we can do.
Yeah, and it's first of all, what I'll say is the jailbreak. I've said this before, but the jailbreak, great rule. Absolutely love it.
So fun.
Yeah, unless it's against the team that you're cheering for, then it
Okay.
absolutely.
I see.
Yeah, I always say that. But yeah, I can't agree with you more. I think how inclusive this space has been, I think, is something that the fans have picked up on. It's not like there's something about, and I would say the most experience I have in sports is around the NHL, around the Ottawa Senators, being in the Ottawa area. And, you kind of go there and you're used to hearing like, too many men, you're used to hearing even something as simple as defensemen. And then now with this league, I've found myself kind of, I don't want to say triggered, but I like when you're referring to the PWHL and you say defenseman, I'm like, there's something that like tweaks in me. It's like, no, it's a defender. And then now it's the opposite. When I listen to an NHL broadcast, it's now I'm expecting to hear a defender, not a defenseman.
Oh, I see. Well, and I will preface this, Chris, is that I'm personally very much like, I love having discussions about this, because it's not going to be a one and done scenario, right? And there's always a debate about, well, the players say this. Okay, like that's the truth of it, is like how we self-reference is one thing and how we reference our team is one thing. I'm not on a team. And so my thing is, I always just want to operate out of the most respect for everybody involved. And so everyone's going to have a different opinion about it. And there are some people who are very passionate about, no, it's defensemen, I'm not offended. And that's okay, right? And like, I think that there's room to have those discussions. You and I don't need to have that right now, but I know what where sort of I'm operating from. And I think that that's, if I'm allowed to operate in that space, then great. Right. So it is about that, but you're right. It is interesting once you start to hear those words and you go, oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Like, now I'm used to this other way of doing it.
Yeah. And I think it also highlighted, to your point, just how maybe, I don't know what the right word would be to use to describe this, but where I was just so used to hearing those terms, right?
Yeah,
where now I'm realizing how much more inclusive we could have been this entire time by not using, those specific terms, whether it's on the ice, whether it's off the ice. This goes back to, you're just so used to seeing dudes in the broadcast booth, right? Like that's just what you're used to, right? You're used to hearing, too many men calls. And then you're like, wait, what do they call it in this league? Like, what's the name of a too many people, too many players? Like you realize how maybe narrow your view was in the world. I mean, this is now getting a little bit more broad, but in the world as a whole, but specifically when it comes to the sports world. And I think that's one of the things that has stood out to me about the PWHL is just how inclusive, how like we're all here together. Let's just make it fun. Let's just be together, right? And I think that's something that
I have a really. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, go.
I just have a funny little anecdote about just gendered words, and it was hilarious. I did an interview. This was many years ago now. Super great interviewer. It was lovely, but he got stuck introducing me, and he even went, "Okay, hold on, we're gonna have to re-record." He goes, "Play-by-play." I'm like, "Announcer." Commentator. He was so used to be like, play-by-play guy, blah blah blah, right? Like that's how he just play-by-play guy, and I'm like, yeah, we're not all guys. So it was so funny. He had this look of like panic on his face, like, what do I call you? What is the word? Like, yeah, there's words for it, right? Like we can figure. I just laughed it off. I'm like, thank you for asking it. This is probably the best way to work around it. But
Yeah, and I think all the more reason why I think this league, while obviously it has there's so much that's going to come from this league for these incredible, hockey players and women just in general, people in general. But
Mhm.
I think this is also going to start maybe making people think about how they approach the conversations they have with players and the respect and the appreciation. And we're going to start seeing this highlight how, like these are yourself included. These are incredible women. We need to amplify their voice because they are adding an element to this game that has absolutely been lost. When you're looking at these broadcasts, for you specifically, when you're sort of in your world, when you're looking at these broadcasts and you're like, that's a dude, that's a dude, that's a dude. Seen that guy for 20 years, seen that guy for 20 years. Now it's going to be an opportunity for, this next generation of incredible broadcasters who are going to come in with fresh perspectives, more inclusivity, more understanding, and an even deeper knowledge because they've had to push themselves even harder to be able to be noticed, to be able to be respected. That when they finally get that opportunity, are they going to run with it? And I can't wait for that. That's one of the things that I love about this league.
I also want to give a lot of credit to, I know we talk a lot about the booth, and the booth is like awesome. That's where I live and vibe with the color commentator. But our ringside reporters, and honestly, all the people involved with the feature storytelling as well, I want to send out the biggest kudos to because one thing I love, I'm going to use the example of Natalie Spooner. And it's so awesome that we get to talk about her motherhood, but that is not the thing that defines her, right? And that's what's always, in my opinion, as a woman, always been the missing piece is that we can talk about Sophie Jakes and she can talk about being a black player, but that is not the only thing that defines her. It's a part of who she is. It's a big part of her story, but it's not the only thing. And I think that's always been a piece that when women's sports were highlighted, perhaps just for an event or just for one game because it was the big game, you kind of missed that. You had to be quick with your storytelling or had to really only gloss over things. And I think that is what, to me, maybe this is a better answer for the innovation question. Maybe it's as simple as just being able to tell real stories and appreciate all aspects of being a female athlete, which for some people includes motherhood, right? And includes the journey that comes with, or perhaps being, you know, just sharing the joys of your life with people. I love Emma Mashmeyer. To me is just such a joy. I'll admit I follow her on the social. I follow a ton of players on the social, so I'm not biased here. Um, but her just expression of joy all the time and sharing her story, but also being very much like, I'm a goaltender. I'm here to I'm here to win games for my team, right? Like that's the best part of this has been we get the hockey, we get the intensity, we get to talk about the sports, and we also get to share this personal life. But neither one is the sole definition of the other.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that the media's maybe been preconditioned just because it's the way that it's always been, where it's like with the men, we're talking about the game, we're talking you lost the last game, you're on a 5-game winning streak, whatever the case may be, but the media doesn't know how to handle like the women's sport in general, but also okay, you're also a mother. Like let's highlight you being a mother. And to your point, that's absolutely an important point or an important aspect of their life. But like you said, that doesn't define them. It's only one part, one chapter of their book. There are so many more chapters about what makes this athlete as incredible as they are, and it's about encompassing all of those aspects, not just focusing on the fact that she's a woman or she is a mother or whatever that aspect of it may be. It can also be all about them on the ice and how incredible they are on the ice, what like their international experience, all those different things can factor in. And I think with this league, we're going to start to see a lot of those changes, not just in this league as it evolves, but also in other leagues. And that's something that's really thrilling to me.
Yeah, I have to just add that the hope would be that that's also how we continue to treat, male athletes too, right? Because I have never met a football player who isn't ecstatic to be asked about fatherhood, for example. Play the Riders last year, they had eight members of their team either become a first-time dad or welcome, a second child to the family. And we would totally talk about that. That's a big part of it. Hey, so your routine at home's a little different lately. Oh yeah, I'm doing this at night, or and gives, credit to sort of the dynamic that allows it. That is a big part of the story. And I think that's so great. Like, let's talk more about that. Again, the same thing, like neither one thing defines the person, but it's a part of their story, and it's great.
And we will be right back. I would like to take a moment to talk about our sponsor, DraftKings Sportsbook. Bet the action on the ice with DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the app now and use code THPN. New customers can get $150 instantly in bonus bets for betting just $5 on hockey. That's code THPN only on DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. The crown is yours. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. Please play responsibly. See dkng.com/hockey for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gambling resources. NHL and the NHL Shield are registered trademarks of the National Hockey League. Copyright NHL 2023, all rights reserved. And now, back to the show. I want to kind of shift gears a little bit, and I want to say it's obvious to me through how you connect with people. You have a website that allows people to connect with you as well. I want to know, and obviously you said yes to joining me on this podcast and being able to chat about your story and just to be able to chat, you and I, which has been incredible. It's obvious to me that connecting with people is something that's really important to you. Whether it's advice in the media or whatever it may be. I guess quite simply, why is it so important to you to be connecting with people, to be connecting with fans, to be able to be connecting with potentially the next generation of journalism students and media personalities?
I know I wouldn't be where I am without people who opened up, whether it's they opened up the channel of communication or they were receptive to me going, hey, can I talk to you about this? Or just have that conversation. It's also incredible who you meet, who you get to know, and what you can take from other people's stories and kind of go, that's an incredible learning lesson. You know, I'm going to carry some of that forward with me. I think that's a big part of it. And so much of my own journey to get here, like I don't think anybody goes through life without self-doubt, but it's something that that's been a big part of my story. And I know I'm not the only one who's dealt with mental health challenges along the way. It's just whether that's anxiety or even episodes of depression throughout my life. And the reason I crave connection and want to talk to people is you just never know what someone's going through. You never know if all they need to hear is that one thing of like, hey, I see what you're doing right now. You have no idea where you're going tomorrow. That's fine. You're where you need to be today. And it's not a farce, right? It's actually a genuine thing because you've told me what your passions are and what you want to do. And I can see that you're doing the work. And I can see that this is a great moment for you to just hear that gentle reminder that you're on the right path and it's okay. It's also okay if tomorrow you wake up and realize, okay, I think I'm good with this. I'm going to pack it up. As long as you're asking yourself that or saying that to yourself without a lens of fear, I think you're in a great place. And because fear can be great if you harness it properly, not great if you're making decisions out of it, right? So I think that's a big part of it. And also the fact that I sometimes feel a little bit like a nomad, just a little bit like, okay, I'm in this new place, I'm doing this thing. And I moved to the GTA in December, and that was a decision I had made back in May that I was going to be doing that before there was a PWHL. And I had to make a decision of like, this is a move I want to make for my personal life. It's the right move for me at this point. I'm going to trust that this is the right step in this journey for me. And it's not completely a leap of faith in the sense that I didn't bother talking to anybody or sharing this dream of mine with anybody. No, I was very proactive in talking about it and sharing that and connecting with people, saying, hey, this is happening. This is what I'm thinking of. And lo and behold, that person gets in touch with this person. And hey, did you hear about a league that's starting up? And all of these discussions start to unfold. And I think that that's such a big part of it is it's never just about career advancement. I really hope nobody takes it that way. It truly is just about you never know who you're going to meet. You never know what friends you're going to make along the way. And being someone now who's, I thought about it the other day, I couldn't believe it. My move to the GTA was my 18th move since starting this wild journey, which for some people that's like, ah, that's nothing. I've done 30 moves in my media career. For others, that's a lot. And for me, it's a lot. I never expected to be somebody who would be moving that much. Not 18 different cities, I'll preface that, but different places. And every step of the way you're going, this is the right decision. This is the right decision. And you kind of get that reinforced through the connections you make and the friendships you make and the people you meet, all that.
Yeah, I would say absolutely. I will have that advice on repeat for sure for myself. I think that's profound advice, and I think what stood out to me again, and it's been kind of like it's kind of tied this entire conversation together, is just being authentic, just being genuine, just being yourself, and just being open. And I think it's wild when if you tell yourself you cannot do something, you will not do that thing. If you say there's a chance that I could have this opportunity, and I always tell myself, I'm just going to shoot my shot. And more often than not, like it surprisingly will pay off, but it's putting yourself out there, but it's about being you. And that's one of the things you've kind of either said it directly or alluded to it throughout this entire conversation. And I think that's something that's going to that I'm going to take away from this is just continue the importance of being genuine and the importance of being you can take you to places you may not have thought they could take you to.
Yeah, there's a wonderful mantra, and it's not mine. It's one of my mentors. He passed it along. He said, remember, you are the best at what you do, the way you do it, and it's needed. And I love that because it's not taken away from what anyone else is doing. It's not trying to assert yourself above anyone else. It's about owning, I'm the best at what I do, how I do it, and it's important and it's needed. And right, you're putting that energy out there, like that's good because it carves out a space for you. And I think that's a very important way to look at things. It doesn't push everybody out. It keeps everybody in.
Whew, okay, that was good thing I was sitting down for that. That's a fantastic mantra, and I'm gonna definitely take that to heart. That was really, no wonder it's stuck with you all of this time. I totally understand. I want to respect the amount of time that I've already taken from you, and I have only one last segment, and this is going to be. This has been a profoundly deep conversation, and I respect and have enjoyed it thoroughly. But we're going to do a quick game of 20 questions. How does that sound?
Sure, let's do it.
Good news for you is it's 20 questions minus about 12. So this will be a lot easier for you.
Okay, that sounds good. I'll try to keep it short.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's fine. So this is going to just be, it could be random. It could be in terms of your broadcasting career. I'm just going to kind of throw them at you and see where we go.
Okay.
Okay. So if you weren't in broadcasting and journalism, what would you be doing?
Massage therapy.
Okay. Wow. There was no doubt in that one.
I don't know what it is. I've always loved massaging. I'm a very amateur massager. But I just love it. I don't know what yeah. And I also love going to get massages, so I guess that works out well.
Yeah. There's the tie-in right there. That's
Mhm.
the gateway right there. All right. What's a piece of advice you'd give the younger version of Daniela?
Oh, and she will not listen to me when I tell her, but you gotta just not stress so much. You just don't worry about it too much. But I know she would. So, but I wish I have to tell myself that now. Sometimes you get too future focused and just remain present. It's okay. Keep doing what you're doing. You do have to keep working hard, but don't worry so much.
All right, good advice. I think most of us could probably take that same advice as well. So
Hmm.
I know I'll take that to heart. What you mentioned earlier? Obviously, in broadcasting, you're typically traveling all the time. You'd mentioned like every 3 days, whatever it may be, based on the schedule. Obviously, what do you do to relax and unwind after flying all over the place and covering various sports?
Big fan of taking my dog Maggie. She's a sweetheart. I'll tell you right now, she's nearly 10. I love her. Adopted her during the pandemic. I love taking her for walks, like kind of near water again. So we have a beautiful pier near where I live, and so walking along there is great. And I'm a true crime junkie, so I do love me some podcasts, and I do need to flip off of sports sometimes, and so then I go that direction. I know that someone listening out there goes, "Yeah, me too." So that's something else I do. I'll listen to some podcasts and just chill a little bit.
And okay, so two follow-ups to that.
Oh no.
Dog no, it's all right, it's all right.
Okay.
Dog breed and what is your like, do you have, like, a go-to true crime podcast?
Oh, you know what? I wish I could say that I have a go-to, but I am a big fan of, this is so funny, and people who know true crime will get this, but Keith Morrison, who also happens to have a Saskatchewan connection, might I just add. I find his voice very soothing. So sometimes I enjoy those, although it's sometimes very hokey and hilarious, like the way that it's scripted and written. So I also just like I love listening to the podcasts that have family members actually delivering it, because once again it's very authentic storytelling. So I don't have a go-to. I'm just kind of all over the place with that. And for Maggie, she is a black lab, and we don't know what she's crossed with, but I'm convinced there's a little bit of shepherd because she's quite a bit taller. So she doesn't have that like low to the ground kind of lab build, but she is a lab through and through. So food motivated, so loving, so gentle with everyone, whether she like if she's near someone who's a senior or if she's with a baby, she's just like she's so good. I love her. So yeah.
No wonder, she has, so quickly endeared herself to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I have to ask, is there a favorite league? We'll keep it with league rather than team specific that you've had an opportunity to cover, whether it's you're on the sideline reporter or you're also play by play.
Ooh, that's such a good question. I mean, I can't say, well, I think everybody knows PWHL. I think that goes without saying. I've loved absolutely every single second of working within the PWHL. Every single person is so amazing. And I know that might sound like the cheesiest thing to say, but absolutely 100% true. But I also really enjoyed, and this is going to be a little throwback to Saskatchewan hockey here, but Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League, incredible. My first ever TV broadcast for hockey was in Kindersley, Saskatchewan with that league. And I don't think I would have gotten as much hockey experience if I had only stuck, say, to U Sports, because their seasons are quite limited, right? Like you only get so much out of it. But then after that, I was able to like do some work with the SJHL, and I just loved. I have all the time in the world for them because the commissioner, Kyle McIntyre, just believes in people who are passionate about the sport, who want to learn, and always had opportunities available. And yeah, I have all the time in the world for them. And they're just great people. The coaches are great. The players are great. And the commissioner's great too.
Love that.
Yeah.
What is something that's on your career to-do list that you're most excited about trying?
Oh, ooh. I would love to branch out, obviously, and do even more sports. But one thing is some basketball play-by-play. I would love to kind of dive into that because I've covered basketball in a number of ways as a host of a show, as sideline or courtside rather. But I think that'd be fun having that opportunity. So
A
that's my
specific
fingers.
league, a specific league that you'd like to go, like.
No, you know what? I'm going to keep it very open. I've done work with the CEBL, and again, I love the CEBL because in a lot of ways, I don't want to take up too much more time. Innovative. The target ending. If you don't know anything about the Canadian League Basketball League, go and take in a game. It's awesome, and I love the target ending because it's not the NBA. I don't want the NBA to switch to target ending. I like it for the CEBL. I think it makes it uniquely Canadian, and it gives the game and just an added little bit of spice at the end. It's super fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I would absolutely agree. That great call. Great call on that. Absolutely. And lastly, before we wrap things up today, what has been something you've enjoyed the most about your time with the PWHL? I know that the list could go on for
So many
days.
things.
Yeah, but I guess like what are some of the things that some of the things you've enjoyed most about the PWHL?
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. There's just so many ways I could slice this. I think the obvious is that the hockey itself has been tremendous. So being able to call not only the first game, but to call the first shootout game, to call you're not going to like this. I'm bringing up a sore point for Ottawa, but that 3-0 comeback from New York, moments that you're just like, what am I witnessing right now? Right? This is incredible. Because for me, it's never about a team, it's about good hockey. I always tell people, I'm like, I'm just cheering for good hockey because from where I sit, I get to do that. I get to just enjoy whatever is developing on the ice and hopefully add to that story and give some more context and give some more information to it. But I think the biggest thing, the most profound thing, and I promise I'm not going to get emotional here, but it's honestly seeing just all the fans, just everybody who, wherever they're from, coming and enjoying a game of hockey and really being engaged like that. That is what I love. If I can hear a crowd gasp because there was a near miss, it just tells me that no one's in their phones. They're in the moment. They're with it, and it's getting chills thinking about it. And obviously meeting fans, but not because they want to necessarily talk to me about something I'm doing. I love just meeting fans and them saying, oh my goodness, I was able to get this thing signed, or oh my goodness, I finally got to meet so and so, or can you believe this? I've been waiting to meet this player for 50 or 15 years, and finally I got to do that today. That's the stuff that like lights my soul on fire. I love it so much because that's what this is about. Like to me, that's what sports is. It's that, and it's whatever experience. So if you're an official coming into the game, you're going to have a whole take on it. If you're a fan, if you're me, or if you're Cheryl Pounder, Becky Keller, you're going to have such a great connection to the game too. And so there's a million things I love about it, but I think at the root of it all is just experiencing the joy with everyone in whatever moment that they're having is just great.
I've said this to echo that point. I've said this also 1,000 times, but a PWHL game is the most incredible, not just hockey experience I've ever had, but sports experience I've ever had.
Mm-hmm.
The way you mentioned, you hit the nail on the head there, like the fan engagement, how passionate the fans are, but also like just there's like you see generations of especially women who they're bringing their kids, their young girls to these games who have like the most adorable, most incredible signs. They're looking, when the players come off the ice after pregame warm up, they're like bumping fists with everyone, signing stuff. Like it's just like it is such a heartwarming experience to be a part of. And those are those things that it's not just like, okay, they go out on the ice, they skate around for a bit, an hour, and then they go. Like there's all these other aspects of it that have made this, like I said, just the most incredible sporting experience I have ever had, bar none, not even close.
And it invites everybody to be a part of it. If you know what I mean, like things like even just to me when I was a kid, I was pretty shy, which shocking, I know, but I was pretty shy. So like the thought of going up to an athlete and like even just here's a high five, that would be a little intimidating for me. And I love it. I love the confidence. It's always going to go back to the young girls for me, but truly any of the kids who are out there like, yeah, I want to give Brianne Jenner a fist bump. Yeah, I want to tell, Carly Jackson, who might not even be playing, but I want to tell her that I love and appreciate everything she's done. Like it's that, right? It hooks you. And I think that's the part that people, of course, have asked me questions about, what do you have to say about naysayers? And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm too focused on everyone who's here. I'm too focused on everyone who's actually like showing up and participating and loving this. Because as with anything in life, you're going to have people who do or don't like it. Okay. I'm too focused on what's happening right now. And that's kind of how I see it. I know maybe from a business front, there's other things you have to look at, but I think from where I'm sitting, that's what I enjoy.
I love that. And I can't think of a better way to end this conversation outside of saying once again just how much I am incredibly thrilled and happy that you said yes to joining me today. This has been a conversation that has been both great from a getting to know you, but also we got pretty profound there for a little bit.
Yeah, and we got to have some conversations. It was good.
This has been a lot of fun. I'm thrilled that you were able to join me today. I know that we went a little bit longer than expected, but you've just been so supportive of me and what I've been doing. So I just want to say thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure, Chris. Thanks.
All right. And there you have it, folks, for Daniella Ponticelli. I'm Chris Sinclair, and this has been the Rinkside Rundown podcast. Cheers.